You are listening to Diasporic Music on Black Power 96 with Melinda Francis, Norman Richmond, and joining us on the line is Dr. Gerald Horne. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, it's all good. What about you?
Oh, everything is good. I'm just got through listening to Bright Lights, Big City, and thinking about you singing that in the Soviet Union and just getting a kick out of that.
Yeah, I remember
so
that.
When are you going to entertain? No, I shouldn't say it. When are you going to bless the listeners of the worldwide audience with one of Jimmy's tunes?
Well, I'm not sure, but I will say this. This is breaking news. I'm thinking about trying out for the Basketball Africa League. I know what you're thinking. You think I've lost a step or two. You think that I can no longer drain the three or play the tough D. But a man has to go for his dreams. And this is my dream.
Oh, okay. So you have. I don't think you've lost a step or two. Maybe a step or three.
I see.
I'm just messing with you. Only thing I can do is quote yourself. Good luck.
I see. I see. I think I'll have the last laugh.
All right. Let me say that Recep Erdogan, the president of Turkey, is going to visit Saudi Arabia, and this is his first trip to Saudi Arabia since the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi. What are the ramifications of that?
Well, of course, Khashoggi was the Saudi national, a contributor to the Washington Post newspaper owned by Jeff Bezos of Amazon fame. He went to the Saudi consulate in Istanbul to get some papers confirmed, and he never left. Or put it this way, he never left intact. Apparently, they killed him, then chopped up his body, and his body has never been recovered. And interestingly enough, the Turks had cameras on the whole time. So they filmed the entire episode. It makes you wonder why they didn't intervene when they saw him being roughed up or even being sawed into 100 different pieces. But that's another story. But in any case, the Turks are sort of under siege right now because they don't have good relations with NATO, even though they're a charter member of NATO and have one of the largest armies in NATO. They get continually rebuked for trying to join the European Union. They don't have good relations with France, the anchor of the European Union. Their relations with Moscow are off and on. On the one hand, Turkey has tried to act as a mediator in the conflict with Ukraine. But on the other hand, Turkey has been a major supplier of weapons to Ukraine, including drones. And in fact, as a footnote, listeners should know that drone warfare is the latest innovation. And the Iranians make drones that they've turned over apparently to the Yemenis, who've inflicted damage on the Saudis. That is to say, these look like toy airplanes. They can fit into your hand, but they can be used to engage in surveillance. They can be used to start fires. Of course, you don't have to worry about your side losing soldiers because they're autonomous vehicles. They're robots, flying robots. They can shoot weapons. In fact, I'm writing a speech right now to deliver at the Institute of Haitian Studies at Brooklyn College in New York in 2 weeks from now. Oh, in fact, I have to consult with you because that might come up during our time of our discussion. I'll let you know. But one of the points that I'm making is that the United States is using drones to keep track of Haitians trying to cross the border from Mexico or from Baja California into San Diego. And so the Turks have sort of overplayed their hand. So now President Erdogan is going with hat in hand to beg from the Saudis. And of course, this is becoming a well-beaten, well-trod path because recall we talked a few weeks ago about how the Saudi leader, Mohammed bin Salman, would not return the phone calls of Joe Biden. At the same time, the Saudis have given Jared Kushner, Mr. Trump's son-in-law, $2 billion to play with, to invest in various enterprises. And if his record is any indication, it'll probably be $2 billion not well spent. But I think that the Saudis are betting on and planning on a Trump comeback in 2024. And that particular investment will leave them in good stead, they think. And certainly, Mr. Erdogan hopes to get some of that Saudi cash as well.
Let me, before I turn it over to Melinda, let me mention the fact that Kwame Ture always talked about technology being able to be used for justice or injustice. And drones were also used, I think, to ship medicine in some parts of Africa. I don't know if it was Rwanda or, yeah. So that was, I guess, that's a case of technology being used for. Although, in my judgment, I know it's in your judgment too, that what's the tall fellow from Rwanda? Kagame is not on the right side of history, but he used technology right in that particular situation.
Well, it's at the University of Houston campus right now. You have autonomous vehicles. You see them running around campus delivering food. You order through your smartphone, and an autonomous vehicle delivers the food to you. In San Francisco, they are now having a pilot program for autonomous taxis, which obviously presents a mortal threat to Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, truck drivers, bus drivers, etc. So this is happening as we speak.
Capitalism going mad. And I guess Melinda's next.
Do we want to go into what's happening in France?
Well, it's very important, potentially. What's happened is that the parties of the left, the communists, the socialists, the Greens, and the party of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who got double digits, barely missing the two-person runoff, they have decided to unite for parliamentary elections in a few weeks. This could mean that they will gain a majority in the parliament, which means that Mélenchon, a former Trotskyist, will become prime minister under Macron. Now, once again, please humor me as I use this opportunity to compare the French Revolution with its so-called counterpart in North America, where we're talking seriously about leftists coming to power in Paris. In the United States, we're supposedly at this grand revolution, we're worried about leftists being liquidated, I mean, basically. So there you have it. That's my advertisement on the soapbox for today.
In terms of the, what role did the anarchists play in the French left during that period, and what is the the anarchists? What role did they play in that during that period?
Do you mean in the 18th century?
No. In not 18th century, but in the 50s and 60s, during the in France, when there was movement around the world against French colonialism.
Well, the anarchists were much more well established for whatever reason in the Spanish-speaking world, in Spain and in Mexico. Mexico, of course, being the largest country where Spanish is spoken on planet Earth. They didn't play as significant a role in France as they did in the Spanish-speaking world.
Okay. So, Melinda, you have some shots? I mean, you have some questions.
Do we want to go ganging up on China?
Oh, yes. So what's happening, I was listening to one of our friends on the left today who was basically using the typical left line, which is that you look at this crisis in Central and Eastern Europe with tunnel vision, going from Washington to Kiev to Moscow. Whereas if you step outside of that tunnel, you have to ask yourself, why are so many countries outside of Europe in the North Atlantic not joining the sanctions bandwagon against Moscow? And that's a question that our friends on the left don't want to answer. And I think that the other shoe is in the process of dropping. If you follow the news carefully, what you'll see is that U.S. imperialism is seizing the occasion for helping to gin up this anti-Moscow coalition to then turn it towards China. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was supposed to have given a speech this week on that point, but he came down with COVID, so I assume he'll give it in the next week or two. In the press today, there are articles about how U.S. imperialism is pressuring Taiwan to buy more weapons from Raytheon, the former home of Pentagon chief Lloyd Austin, and from Lockheed Martin. And so the gang up on China is in motion. The United States is not stopping with seeking to execute regime change in Moscow, per the words in recent weeks of President Biden. They're going for the big enchilada, which is the People's Republic of China. And I hope our friends on the left realize that, because the problem is when you join a coalition led by US imperialism and French imperialism and German imperialism, at best, you will be the caboose on that train. You will not be consulted. You will basically be a kind of useful idiot for whatever whims they decide to pursue. And our friends on the left should also ask, why is it that Lula da Silva, in the current issue of Time magazine in the United States, speaking of the once, and I trust, future president of Brazil, also raises serious questions alongst the line of President Ramaphosa of South Africa and Prime Minister Modi of India, raising questions about NATO's strategy that backed Russia into a corner, and that NATO is a culpable party. That is to say that you cannot create a situation whereby you point a gun at someone and then complain when they don't wait for you to shoot that gun. You are culpable. And I think that that's what this crisis in Central and Eastern Europe tends to illustrate.
You're listening to Diasporic Music on Black Power 96 with Melinda Francis and Norman Richmond. Dr. Horne, you have been talking about France, French imperialism and French colonialism for forever and ever and ever. And the former head of state of Guinea, Alpha Conde, is on trial in Guinea as we speak. Could you fill our listeners in on, I guess, first of all, there's a lot of people who don't know who Alpha Conde is and what, why is he on trial?
Well, he was the former president of Guinea, Conakry, a successor, in other words, of the late great Sékou Touré. He was overthrown in a coup by the military some months ago. And despite the protestations of the regional grouping, the Economic Community of West African States, he is now going to be tried for murder and faces the prospect of execution. But since you raised French colonialism, let me ask you another question, which is, off the coast of Quebec, there are a couple of islands that are still controlled by France. They're overseas territories along the lines of Guadeloupe or Martinique. And I'm wondering, I assume that in the French press in Quebec, there's coverage of these islands. But what about in the English press in Ontario? I mean, do you know much about these islands and what they're there for and what France is doing there?
All I know about those territories is what you've talked about. I follow the press fairly well, and it's nothing is jumping out of the page on me. Maybe Melinda has heard more than I have, but it's kind of a well-kept secret. Now we have a comrade from Haiti who listens to the show, a close comrade, and he does a lot of radio. I will consult with him and see if he can give some information. But maybe, do you know anything about that, Melinda?
No, I mean, I learned that on this show. So in the press, in the Anglophone press, there's nothing.
The islands are Miquelon and Saint-Pierre. They're off the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I've often wondered if France is holding on to these territories as a sort of potential lever against both Canadian imperialism and U.S. imperialism.
I would say yes, because doesn't France basically have spots in strategic spots where they basically are whitemailing whoever they want to whitemail in order to to keep their interests going? Isn't that a French sort of a part of the French playbook?
Well, sure. And your Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who the last I looked, he's in Ukraine, interestingly enough. His boots are on the ground. I trust and I hope that he's paying attention to this.
He is. He's not as sharp as his father, and he's not as sharp as John Chrétien. He seems to be more sympathetic to the U.S. imperialists as his father or John Chrétien was, because those two, while they were part of the imperialist camp, they kind of took a little bit of pride of that. If they disagreed on an issue, they would at least tell the U.S. that, at least you would know they were in opposition. Ultimately, they might go along with it, but you would know that they were not completely. They was more doing a solidarity thing than they were doing they may have claimed to have wanted to side with the oppressed. If that makes any sense.
I understand.
Had another question, Sister Melinda?
Yeah. Do we want to move on to the anti-Islam violence in India?
Yeah, it's really out of control. And see, what's happening with this anti-Muslim violence in India is that India, under Prime Minister Modi, is being courted. It's being courted by Russia, being courted by U.S. imperialism to join more aggressively the anti-China front. It's being courted by Britain, which after leaving the European Union is now looking for a major trading partner. And so Prime Minister Modi just had a major foreign visit to Denmark and to France. And this anti-Muslim violence hardly was an issue. So it doesn't bode well, I'm afraid to say, for our Muslim brothers and sisters in South Asia, given how Modi and his BJP are being courted.
Just to add to that, it seems that I've been seeing in Delhi, they've been demolishing homes, so it seems like they're taking playbook from Israel, really.
Which is not surprising given the close relationship between the two states. Yeah. It's very troubling, but as I said, India doesn't face that much international pressure because the United States wants it to turn against Russia. Russia wants to keep India on side. United States and NATO want India to turn against China. So therefore, Modi gets a pass.
I know you always. I'm sorry, did I cut you off, sir?
No, not at all.
You have always talked about the fact that India has always been more leaning towards the Soviet Union as opposed to the U.S. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, oh, sure. I mean, especially since independence in 1947. I guess the turning point is 1971 with
that's what I should have
the
said.
secession of what becomes Bangladesh from Pakistan. And India, of course, is in solidarity with what becomes Bangladesh. U.S. imperialism is not. China is not. Russia stands by New Delhi when it thought it was about to be attacked by all three powers, Pakistan, China, and the United States. And unlike, I'm afraid to say, some of our brothers and sisters here in North America, south of Canada, folks throughout the world don't tend to have amnesia when it comes to who helped them in the past, because they know that that same situation can emerge in the future. And by the way, Norman, I have some bombshells to report to you that I can't talk about on the air, but you should call me because I want to seek your counsel.
No problem. Now, can you tell everybody who is Antonio Delgado? And his name has been coming up, but I know a lot of people don't know who he is, and I'd like for you to explain who he is and why people should know what he is about.
Well, he's the new lieutenant governor of the state of New York, and he may continue after November being the lieutenant governor of the state of New York, a heartbeat away from being governor. I mentioned him because he identifies as, quote, Afro-Latino, although his mother is Black American and his father is Cape Verdean.
Cape Verdean, okay.
He attended Cape Verde, of course, being the island off the west coast of Africa. It's part of Guinea-Bissau. And
that's the birthplace of Amilcar Cabral, right? Cape Verde. Right.
Former Portuguese colony, territory.
Right.
And he attended Colgate University in upstate New York, where he was a basketball teammate of Donald Foyle, who your listeners may know, because Foyle has roots in the Caribbean and was raised to maturity by the Marxist economic historian J. Mandel, and then had a successful career as a professional basketball player, a very literate young man. And Delgado also played professional basketball, but not in the NBA, but I think in Puerto Rico, and then attended Harvard Law School. And so it's an interesting story, bringing together many of the strands of the African diaspora.
Donald Foyle came to Toronto many, many years ago, and I had the pleasure of meeting him. And he is, I know when a lot of the NBA players would be playing video games, Donald Foyle would be have his head in a book. And I think Donald Foyle is from one of the Grenadines. I don't think he was born on the mainland of St. Vincent. I think he may have been born in Carriacou or someplace like that. But he's still a coach with Golden State, right?
I think so. And it's quite a story.
Well, he's quite an intelligent human being from what I can gather. I know you have basically given him your blessings in terms of his brain power.
Well, the man who raised him, Jay Mandel's a serious scholar. I think that Jay Mandel's still in the land of the living, if I'm not mistaken. Colgate.
Like you always tell people, it's only a Google away, right?
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, he's still a professor at Colgate. Just his latest book is Democracy, America, and the Age of Globalization. But he's also written on the economics of slavery. Very interesting scholar.
I'll have to check him out. Have another question, Melinda?
Yeah, let's move to Sinn Féin surges in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, this is very significant. In the recent election in Northern Ireland, which, as you know, is part of the United Kingdom, part of Great Britain, Sinn Féin came out on top, which pledges to reunite with the Republic of Ireland, which is a very striking development. It suggests, as Brexit in June 2016 portended, that the so-called United Kingdom may be quickly known as the disunited kingdom. Now, to be fair, Sinn Féin, the party that wants linkage with the Republic of Ireland, it got 29% of the vote. So it's not like it got a majority, but it still did better than the Unionist Party. And then there's what might be called an agnostic party. That is to say, it's agnostic or sort of neutral, if you like, on whether Ireland should stay in the United Kingdom, whether it should stay, or whether it should join Ireland. It came in third. And so that's not a ringing endorsement for the United Kingdom, because that's the majority. The majority of voters in Ireland, per this recent election, either A, want to leave the United Kingdom, or B, couldn't care less whether it stays or if it goes. That does not bode well for London. And then we already know about Scotland, how it barely failed in seeking independence just a few years ago and wants another vote on independence. And see, the issue is this, that Scotland and presumably Northern Ireland too, they know Brussels, the European Union, has a deeper pocket than London does. And so they're not going to suffer if they leave United Kingdom. They'll probably wind up doing better. So poor Great Britain, you know, I mean, the once mighty British Empire falling on hard times.
So we should say boo-hoo then, I guess. Okay. I have before you answer this question, I want to the final question is the Tories have suffered defeats in the UK elections. But before you answer that, could you talk about what is the composition of people in Ireland, Northern Ireland, in terms of they were supposedly, Ireland was not a colonial power, but what or maybe they were, but anyway, what is the composition in 2022 of Ireland in terms of African and other people of color?
The Republic of Ireland, as opposed to Northern Ireland.
I'm sorry. I'm talking. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. So the Republic of Ireland, I don't know what the numbers are, but as you know, their leader just recently was of South Asian descent, and they have African elected officials, but I can't say what the percentages are. They can't be that substantial. The Republic has only a population of about 4 million, so it's not that big.
Right. Correct. So I guess we run a little bit over, but could you answer the Tories suffered the defeat?
Well, you know, Boris Johnson, the Tory Prime Minister, he's paying a price for Partygate. When in 2020, after the pandemic hit, he issued these draconian measures about a lockdown, except he chose not to follow his own draconian measures. They were partying like it was 1999 at 10 Downing Street. And the voters do not appreciate that hypocrisy. And obviously, Boris Johnson is sort of out of his depth as a prime minister. I mean, it does not speak well for that country that's their leader, just like Trump being the leader of the United States does not speak well for this country. And speaking of the United States, I should also mention that there's a lot of anxiety and anger right now because of the impending overthrow of abortion rights for women, women's reproductive freedom.
Right.
And it's an opinion of the Supreme Court was leaked. Now, it's not clear if that's the final opinion, but it doesn't look good. But it's one more bit of evidence about this dangerous right-wing turn south of the Canadian border.
Is that turn south? It's not just south of the Canadian borders. It's international, isn't it? Isn't it going on internationally as well?
Yeah, I guess that's a fair assessment. But, you know, we started off talking about the consolidation of the left in France. And let's see what happens with the French parliamentary elections. And I'll be able to give you a more definitive answer.
Okay, so we'll talk sooner. You wanted to talk to me off the record whenever. Or when do you want me to call you?
Hey, man, I know you're a busy man. Your choice.
It'll be sooner than later.
Okay.
Thank you, and I would like to thank Lisa Watson for her technical brilliance. And any final words, Mali Docuvixen?
Well, people stay safe and stay well.